G'day, I'm Ebony Bennett, Deputy Director at the Australia Institute, and today I'm here to congratulate Allan Behm, Head of our International and Security Affairs Program. His book, No Enemies, No Friends, has made the long list for the Australian Political Book of the Year Awards. Congratulations, Allan.
Thank you, Ebony.
We do find ourselves at a real moment internationally of crisis and conflict. Tell us, why did you think it was important to write this book?
Look, I think like most of us, I was sitting around in darkened rooms at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I think all of us got a bit sombre at the time. So I was in something of a brown study, as they call it, and not thinking bad thoughts, but thinking dark thoughts. And I began to wonder, why is it that Australia has been so comprehensively good at being so comprehensively mediocre? As I began to think about what mediocrity means for us when we're so well endowed, we're rich, we are safe and secure, we've got a pretty harmonious population. I mean, we've got problems, but they're not overwhelming problems. And yet, on the international stage, we talk about punching above our weight, but we actually don't do it. In a magazine like The Economist, Australia, as the 13th biggest economy, hardly ever appears.
Yeah.
So why is that? And as I began to think about why it is, so I thought I'd better sketch out a few arguments about it, and it ended up as a book. Now, if it weren't for the pandemic, I would have spared the whole of Australia nearly 100,000 words of stuff.
But the timing of it is fantastic, really, because we find ourselves with a new government looking for new opportunities to re-engage, perhaps to reinvigorate old relationships. So for people who are interested in foreign and security policy, just tell us a little bit more about what they can find in this book.
Look, very often books of this kind will look at the world as it's happening out there. And so they talk about the world in terms of all of the other actors that are on it. I came to the view that what holds Australia back most is our lack of appreciation of just how much agency we have. And so as I began to look for the reasons for that, I began looking much more at Australia as an actor on the international stage than looking at all of the other actors on the stage, which is, as I say, what we characteristically do. So anybody looking in that book will come up with a few surprises. I came to the view quite quickly that one of our biggest limitations is in fact a deep-seated structural racism, which I think we've had since 1788. And I think that's at the heart of our inability to come to a full reconciliation with the fact that the first peoples of Australia have been here for 65,000 years. That is then exacerbated by what I think is an equally profound and very deeply structural misogyny in our society, where it's not just a question of gender equity, it's a question of deep structures in the way in which we do things which actually exclude women from top-level decision making. And I think that that is a big contributor to our lack of agency. That's further compounded by the sorts of fears that we've traditionally had about being a long way from anywhere and dependent on great powers for our safety. And further, that sense of remoteness playing into quite fundamental insecurities. A lot of my family live in remote Australia and they don't feel insecure. And yet a lot of other people in remote Australia do feel insecure because of the distances. And I think that as a nation we have that kind of insecurity that comes from our First Fleet history. Because of all of those things, we have a dependence on a protector and an incapacity for self-affirmation. So instead of being able to say, hey, we're good at things, we rush off to London or New York or somewhere else to have everybody else say we're good at things. And that is well known in Australia as the cultural cringe.
Yeah. Well, congratulations again on making the long list for Australian Political Book of the Year. The book, again, is No Enemies, No Friends, Restoring Australia's Global Relevance. And you can find it in all good bookstores. Congratulations, Allan.
Thank you, Ebony.